Do you know that 99% of people over 60 are eating foods every single day that could be quietly robbing them of their eyesight? I'm not talking about rare, exotic foods. I'm talking about the bread on your counter, the cereal in your cupboard, even the juice you think is healthy. These everyday carbs might feel harmless, but they are fueling silent damage that leads to cataracts, glaucoma, and macular degeneration, the leading cause of vision loss in older adults. Now, some of you might be thinking, "Doctor, that sounds exaggerated. How can something as simple as toast or crackers affect my eyes?" And that's exactly the problem. Most people don't realize the connection until it's too late. By the time blurry vision or dark spots appear, years of damage have already been done. I've seen it again and again in my own patients, and the science is crystal clear. Carbs can be just as dangerous to your eyes as they are to your waistline. In this video, I'm going to expose the top 5 carbs that are secretly harming your vision after 60. These are foods nearly everyone eats, but very few understand the long-term consequences. And here's the shocking part. One of them is marketed as a healthy choice, yet it's one of the biggest threats to your eyesight. Before we dive into the list, I need you to do me one quick favor. Hit the like button, share this video with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel. That simple action gives us the energy to keep uncovering the truth and bringing you real, science-backed health advice, not gimmicks, not quick fixes, but the knowledge that can literally save your vision. So buckle up, because what I'm about to share may completely change the way you look at your breakfast, your snacks, and the future of your eyesight. Why carbs matter more after 60. Most people think of carbohydrates only in terms of weight gain, diabetes, or maybe energy levels, but very few ever connect them to their eyes. The truth is, your eyes are especially sensitive to blood sugar, and once you're over 60, this connection matters more than ever. Every time you eat carbs, especially the refined, fast-digesting kind, your blood sugar spikes. Your body responds by releasing insulin, which moves that sugar into your cells. But with age, your cells become less responsive to insulin. The same bowl of pasta that your body handled easily at 30 may now leave your blood sugar elevated for hours at 65. When that sugar lingers, it doesn't just sit quietly. It binds to proteins in your blood and tissues, forming compounds called advanced glycation end products, or AGE. Think of AGEs like rust forming inside your body. They stiffen blood vessels, cloud delicate proteins, and spark inflammation. And in the eyes, where tissues are fragile and blood vessels are tiny, that rust can cause serious damage. It clouds the lens, leading to cataracts. It weakens circulation in the retina, contributing to glaucoma. And most importantly, it speeds up the breakdown of the macula, the part of the eye that allows you to read, drive, and recognize faces. The science is clear. A Harvard study that followed more than 40,000 women for over a decade found that those who ate the highest glycemic diets had nearly double the risk of developing age-related macular degeneration compared to women who ate lower glycemic diets. Tufts University also showed that older adults who simply cut back on refined carbs reduced their risk of vision loss significantly, even when they didn't lower their calories. In other words, it's not just how much you eat, it's the quality of carbs that matters. I've seen this firsthand in my practice. Patricia, a retired librarian in her late 60s, came to me with early signs of macular degeneration. She wasn't overweight and had never been diagnosed with diabetes. Her only real vice was her love of afternoon cookies with tea. She thought it was harmless, but those daily sugar spikes were quietly damaging her eyes. We swapped her cookies for Greek yogurt with berries and nuts. A year later, her retinal scans showed no further progression. She told me, "I never realized the food I thought was comforting could be stealing my eyesight." This is the reality many people miss. You don't need to have diabetes for sugar to hurt your vision. Even moderate spikes, repeated over years, can take a toll. The British Journal of Ophthalmology reported that seniors who consumed the highest glycemic diets had up to a 49% greater risk of advanced macular degeneration compared to those who ate the lowest. That difference could decide whether you're still able to drive at 75 or whether you have to depend on someone else. So the real question is this. Have you ever thought about your diet in terms of your vision, not just your waistline or blood sugar? Most people haven't. But your eyes are fed by the same blood vessels as your heart and kidneys. If those vessels are under stress, your eyes will show it too. The good news is you don't have to give up all carbs. Whole grains, beans, vegetables, and low glycemic fruits release sugar slowly, fueling your body without overwhelming it. But refined breads, sweet cereals, sodas, and pastries, they're like throwing gasoline on a fire. Every meal you eat is either protecting your eyesight or pushing it closer to decline. As a physician, I've seen that the dinner plate can be more powerful than any prescription. If you want to keep reading, driving, and recognizing your loved ones' faces clearly well into your 70s and 80s, The battle starts not at the pharmacy, but at the table. Carb number 5, white bread and refined grains. White bread is something almost every household in America has on the counter. It seems harmless enough, a slice of toast with breakfast, a sandwich for lunch, maybe a dinner roll at night. But here's the catch. Refined grains like white bread, bagels, and most pasta have been stripped of their natural fiber and nutrients during processing. What you're left with is a naked carb that digests lightning fast and sends your blood sugar soaring. Now, when your blood sugar spikes, so does the stress on your eyes. Those sharp rises fuel inflammation, damage the tiny blood vessels in your retina, and increase the buildup of AGEs, those harmful compounds that accelerate aging in delicate tissues like the lens and macula. You may not feel the damage right away, but over the years, it quietly robs you of clear vision. I remember a patient of mine, Margaret, who was 72 at the time. Every morning without fail, she had 2 slices of white toast with strawberry jam. It was her comfort ritual, something she'd done for decades. When she came to me complaining of blurry vision and difficulty reading, her blood sugar looked normal on routine labs. But her eye scans told a different story, early macular degeneration. She was stunned. How could something so ordinary be connected to her vision loss? We replaced her white bread with a hearty, whole-grain sourdough and added a serving of leafy greens at lunch. Within months, her eye health stabilized. She didn't take any miracle drugs, just made better food choices. And Margaret isn't alone. A large 2019 study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that seniors who regularly ate refined grains had significantly higher rates of cataracts and AMD progression than those who ate whole grains. The researchers concluded that the glycemic index of the carbs you eat can be just as important as the total number of calories when it comes to protecting your vision. In simple terms, 2 people can eat the same number of calories, but if one is eating white bread and the other is eating oats or quinoa, the second person has a much better chance of keeping their eyesight sharp. Another striking example comes from a population study in Japan, where white rice and white bread are dietary staples. Researchers found that older adults who consumed the highest amounts of refined grains were 37% more likely to develop diabetic retinopathy, even when their blood sugar wasn't in the diabetic range. The damage was happening quietly beneath the surface until vision loss became unavoidable. So, let me ask you, when you reach for bread, are you choosing something that fuels your body or something that slowly chips away at your eyesight? That's not a small question. Your choice at breakfast could mean the difference between driving independently in your 70s or depending on someone else to get you to the store. From my decades of practice, here's my advice. Swap refined grains for slow-digesting, fiber-rich alternatives. Sprouted grain bread, steel-cut oats, and quinoa all release sugar gradually, keeping your blood sugar steady and protecting your eyes' sensitive blood vessels. Even small changes make a difference. If you normally have 2 slices of white toast, start by replacing one with sprouted bread. If pasta is your comfort food, try mixing half whole grain pasta with half zucchini noodles. These aren't extreme sacrifices, they are investments in your vision. Your eyesight is too valuable to gamble on something as ordinary as bread. Choose wisely because every slice is either helping your eyes or quietly hurting them. Carb number 4, sugary breakfast cereals. Breakfast is the meal where many older adults unintentionally set themselves up for vision problems. Cereal is marketed as quick, heart-healthy, and even fortified with vitamins, but the reality is that most boxed cereals are nothing more than sugar bombs in disguise. Even cereals labeled whole grain or high fiber often contain more sugar than a glazed donut. When you pour a bowl of these cereals, you're not giving your body steady fuel, you're giving it a jolt that spikes blood sugar, fogs your vision, and begins to quietly damage the fragile capillaries in your retina. I've seen this pattern many times. Harold, a 71-year-old patient of mine, believed he was making a smart choice with his whole-grain cereal every morning. The box had all the right buzzwords: fiber, fortified, low-fat. But over the years, his A1C crept upward, and his eye exam showed early microvascular changes, tiny signs of stress in the blood vessels of his retina. Harold was stunned because he wasn't eating candy or desserts. He thought cereal was healthy. Once we replaced his morning cereal with steel-cut oats, a sprinkle of cinnamon, and a handful of blueberries, not only did his blood sugar improve, but his ophthalmologist reported that his retinal health had stabilized. Science backs up what I've seen in practice. A meta-analysis published in Nutrients found that diets high in added sugars were strongly associated with diabetic retinopathy, even in older adults who did not have full-blown diabetes. Another study from the Journal of the American Heart Association revealed that people who consumed the highest amounts of added sugars had nearly double the risk of developing microvascular complications, including those that affect the eyes. These findings show that it's not just about managing diabetes. Even modest but frequent sugar spikes from breakfast can set the stage for long-term eye damage. And let's be honest, how many times have you felt that mid-morning crash after a bowl of cereal? That isn't just fatigue. Those swings in blood sugar are a sign that your body and your eyes are paying the price for the so-called healthy choice. So ask yourself, is the convenience of a quick bowl of cereal worth the gradual loss of clear vision? From decades of treating older patients, I can tell you this, there are better options. Slow-cooked oatmeal, chia pudding, or even a simple breakfast of eggs with avocado provide steady energy and protect your eyes rather than harm them. Adding blueberries or other dark berries is especially powerful, as they are rich in anthocyanins, antioxidants proven to support retinal health. Small changes like this not only protect your vision, but also give you sharper energy and focus throughout the day. Your first meal sets the tone for your eyes and your body. Choose a breakfast that protects your vision, not one that slowly steals it away. Carb number 3, soft drinks and sweetened beverages. Sodas and sweetened drinks may seem like something younger people consume, but in reality many older adults still reach for them. I've had countless patients who tell me, I don't drink soda, but I have a glass of juice every morning. What they don't realize is that fruit juice, even when labeled 100% natural, can be just as harmful. The problem lies in liquid sugar. When you drink a soda or a glass of orange juice, the sugar floods your bloodstream almost instantly. There's no fiber, no protein, nothing to slow the absorption. That sudden surge acts like acid on your blood vessels, and the fragile vessels in your eyes are among the first to suffer. The research is alarming. A study in investigative ophthalmology and visual science found that people who consumed one or more sugary drinks per day had almost a 30% higher risk of developing diabetic retinopathy. Another large analysis published in Diabetes Care showed that frequent soda drinkers had significantly higher odds of developing not only diabetes, but also microvascular complications, which directly impact eye health. For seniors who already have stiffer blood vessels, slower healing, and reduced resilience, the damage from liquid sugar is magnified. I recall a patient named Thomas, 68 years old, who proudly told me he never touched soda. Instead, he had a tall glass of orange juice every morning. He thought it was healthy because it was natural. But his eye exams began showing early signs of glaucoma, and his blood sugar levels spiked dramatically after his morning juice. When I explained that a single glass of orange juice can contain as much sugar as a can of soda, he was stunned. We swapped his juice for water with lemon slices and suggested he eat a whole orange if he wanted the flavor and nutrients. Within months, his blood sugar stabilized and his intraocular pressure improved. Another case was Mrs. Johnson, a 74-year-old grandmother who loved sweetened iced tea. She never saw it as a problem. It was her afternoon pick-me-up. But she began noticing blurry vision and frequent headaches. Her ophthalmologist detected early retinopathy changes. Once she cut out the sweetened tea and switched to unsweetened herbal tea, her symptoms improved and her progression slowed. So let me ask you, when you pour that glass of juice or reach for a refreshing soda, do you think about what it's doing to your eyes? Most people don't. They focus on calories or weight gain, forgetting that liquid sugar travels quickly through the bloodstream and silently harms the very vessels that keep their vision clear. Here's my advice after decades of seeing these patterns. Skip the sugary drinks. Choose water, unsweetened iced tea, or sparkling water with lemon or cucumber for flavor. If you truly enjoy juice, dilute it with water and keep it to a few ounces, not a full glass. Even better, eat the whole fruit. It contains fiber, which slows absorption and protects your body from sugar spikes. Every sip you take can either support your vision or sabotage it. By making small, consistent swaps, you protect your eyes, your circulation, and your independence for years to come. Carb number 2, white rice. White rice may feel like the most innocent food on your plate. It's comforting, familiar, and for many families it has been a staple for generations. But after 60, white rice becomes a hidden risk to your vision. The reason lies in its high glycemic index. White rice breaks down into glucose almost as fast as table sugar, creating rapid blood sugar spikes that set off a chain reaction of inflammation and vascular damage. These spikes don't just affect your energy levels, they directly stress the tiny blood vessels in your retina, vessels that are already more fragile with age. Over time, this can accelerate cataracts, worsen macular degeneration, and dramatically increase the risk of diabetic eye disease. The evidence is strong. A Harvard study published in the Archives of Ophthalmology found that people who consumed the highest amounts of white rice had a markedly greater risk of developing vision-threatening retinopathy compared to those who ate the least. Another large cohort study in Asia, where rice consumption is highest, showed that individuals eating white rice multiple times a day had a significantly higher incidence of type 2 diabetes, and with it, a sharply increased risk of blindness. Even the World Health Organization has flagged refined rice as a contributor to global rises in diabetes and related eye complications. I remember Mrs. Lopez, a 75-year-old grandmother who ate rice with nearly every meal. When she developed cataracts and early age-related macular degeneration, she was stunned to learn that her lifelong rice habit might be part of the problem. We worked together on small but meaningful changes, cutting her rice portions in half, replacing part of it with quinoa or lentils, and occasionally swapping in cauliflower rice. Within a year, her ophthalmologist noted that her eye disease had stopped progressing, and she herself felt less sluggish after meals. Her story reminds us that even deeply ingrained food traditions can be adjusted without losing comfort or satisfaction. So here's the question. Do you love your rice enough to risk your eyesight, or are you willing to make simple swaps that protect your vision for the years ahead? The truth is, you don't have to give it up completely. What matters is moderation and smarter choices. Brown rice, quinoa, barley, and wild rice digest more slowly, keeping blood sugar steady while offering extra nutrients like fiber, magnesium, and antioxidants that help safeguard the eyes. Even mixing half white rice with cauliflower rice is enough to lower the glycemic impact of a meal. In my decades of practice, I've learned that the food you eat every day quietly shapes the quality of your life tomorrow. White rice might seem harmless, but eaten in excess, it works silently against your eyes. By making small changes now, you're not just protecting your vision, you're investing in your independence, your confidence, and your ability to keep seeing the world clearly. Carb number 1, processed snack foods, crackers, chips, pastries. Processed snack foods are the #1 carbohydrate threat to aging eyes. Crackers, chips, pastries, cookies, and countless packaged snacks create what I call a triple threat. They are loaded with refined flour, loaded with sugar, and often fried or baked in unhealthy oils. This combination doesn't just spike your blood sugar, it fuels chronic inflammation, one of the most destructive forces behind vision loss. Inflammation, paired with the damaging effects of glycation, accelerates the breakdown of the macula, the part of the eye that allows you to read, recognize faces, and see fine details. The research is clear. A study in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition found that diets high in processed carbohydrates increased the risk of age-related macular degeneration progression by more than 40%. Another study from the British Medical Journal linked frequent consumption of ultra-processed foods with a higher risk of developing chronic diseases, including those affecting the eyes. For older adults, whose eyes are already more vulnerable to oxidative stress, the combination of sugar, refined starch, and industrial oils becomes especially dangerous. I think of Ellen, a 70-year-old patient who loved her afternoon ritual of crackers with cheese. It felt innocent, just a little snack. But when she suddenly developed blurry spots in her central vision, retinal scans revealed advanced macular changes. She was stunned when I explained that her daily snack habit was contributing to the problem. We replaced her crackers with raw nuts, carrot sticks, and hummus. Months later, her eye doctor confirmed that her condition had stopped worsening. She told me, "Doctor, I never realized something so small could steal my sight." Another case that stays with me is George, 73, who kept a steady supply of cookies by his recliner. He wasn't overweight, but he struggled with cloudy vision. Once he switched from processed cookies to a handful of walnuts and a piece of dark chocolate, not only did his vision stop declining as rapidly, but he also noticed more stable energy throughout the day. So I ask you, what's in your pantry right now? Are your snacks quietly feeding your cravings at the cost of your eyesight? It's a tough question, but an important one. The good news is that smarter snacks don't just avoid harm, they actively protect your eyes. Almonds, walnuts, and pumpkin seeds deliver vitamin E and zinc, nutrients shown to slow the progression of macular degeneration. Carrots, red peppers, and hummus bring carotenoids and antioxidants that shield the retina from oxidative stress. Even simple swaps, like replacing chips with air-popped popcorn seasoned with herbs instead of salt, can make a noticeable difference over time. After decades of practice, I've seen that these choices matter. Processed snack foods may seem small and harmless, but over the years they quietly chip away at your central vision. By trading them for nutrient-rich options, you're not only satisfying your hunger, You're protecting the independence and clarity that come with healthy eyes. So let's bring it all together. We've uncovered how certain everyday carbs, white bread, sugary cereals, sodas and juices, white rice and processed snacks, aren't just bad for your waistline, they're quietly damaging your eyes. Over time, these foods fuel blood sugar spikes, chronic inflammation, and the breakdown of the delicate tissues that keep your vision clear. The truth is simple. Every meal you eat is either protecting your eyesight or slowly taking it away. The good news is that you can take control right now. By replacing refined carbs with whole grains, nuts, seeds, vegetables, and antioxidant-rich fruits, you can slow down and even prevent much of the damage. Science proves it, and real lives confirm it. Small choices add up to life-changing results. So ask yourself, what's more valuable than being able to see your loved ones' faces, read a book, or enjoy the world around you with clear vision? That gift is priceless, and it's worth protecting every single day. Thank you so much for watching. If this video gave you something new to think about, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe so you won't miss the next video. We'll be back with more powerful, science-backed tips to help you stay healthier, stronger, and independent for years to come. Until then, take care of your eyes, and they'll take care of you.